Welcome back to the Bridge the Gap podcast with Oliver and Zach, the show where we bridge the gaps between spirituality and science, heart and mind, and thoughts and emotions in the different sectors of society. Today, it's just me and Zach today. Hello, good to be back. And we've got some interesting topics to talk about today where we're going to kind of expose ourselves a little bit and open up, be vulnerable, and share with you some transitions going on with both of us and how that's going to relate to you. And we're just going to let the conversation evolve from there. So tune in. I think this is going to be a really interesting episode. And Zach, I want you to lead here.
Well, yeah, I came across this article this past week. It was in a major publication. I can't remember which one exactly, but it was titled "The Cult of Self-Help" or "The Cult of the Coaching Industry." And since Oliver and I are both in this industry, we're trauma-informed coaches, but at the same time, like, we both witnessed the shadow that exists in this industry. And so when I saw that headline, I was like, you know what? They're not wrong. Like, at least to a decent portion. There is a lot of pyramid scheme elements in this industry. There's a lot of, like, especially people who follow me know that how much I have resistance against some of the manifestation teachings and manifestation community, just of like, look how rich I am, look how successful I am. If you invest in me, you can be as rich and successful. Where, what people are really asking for right now, more so than anything else, is to understand themselves and to come back into unity and to, like, work through their unprocessed shit. There are clearly big holes that exist in the mental health sphere. But at the same time, the coaching sphere is trying to plug in some of those holes and not always do it, from my opinion and perspective, effectively or efficiently. The coaching sphere has become the wild, wild west. It's incredibly unregulated. People can be ripped off. People can invest in something that ends up being wildly more beneficial than they could ever imagine. Right now, the difficulty is that, like I said, there doesn't really exist the appropriate framework or model to kind of have a coherent structure within the coaching industry. And so it leads to some predatory behavior, and it also leads to some really amazing people in the sphere as well. And so I think Oliver and I are both going to share some of our own anxieties of being in the sphere, and some of the different shifts and transitions we're making in our career currently or have made, and how we bridge the gap to really making this a field where people potentially aren't being taken advantage of. They know how to get to the right practitioner. They know that the right type of treatment or the right type of coaching they need for where they're at in their process. And so we can begin to cut away some of the more unhealthy elements that exist in the sphere. So articles like "The Cult of Coaching" or whatever, maybe they don't exist in 5 years, even though right now it does seem like it's a valid take.
Yeah, definitely, man. And I'd love to just share a little bit about my own story too, because before I ever became a coach, I was on the other side of the system. And I spent around $40,000 of my own money, which was basically everything I had, on different coaches and self-help, right? Cult of self-help. Yeah. And I got scammed a lot. And there was a lot of people who promised me a lot of things, and I really believed in and trusted, which it became really ugly. And I'm not wanting to call out any specific names. I don't think that's right. But I think that definitely painted me a little bit in this space, but also gave me a certain level of compassion for those who are in that space or looking to find somebody to help them. And there's a lot of that, Zach. There's a lot of those people out there who are just promising money, money, money. If you just sign up for my course, it'll just flow into your account effortlessly. And really, they're the only ones getting rich. And the fact that the wealth is the main focus, I think, is inherently part of the problem. Because I think anybody who has a certain level of consciousness is able to see that what we really need is healing. And when we say healing, this doesn't mean really just manifestation. Oh, I'm just going to attract abundance. It means I'm going to address the pain, the underlying root causes of our suffering. And I'm going to do the work to heal that.
I'm going to interject real quickly too. I'm going to push back against some of what you said too. I think there's also a cult of healing. And what I mean by that is the tendency and need to pathologize or to always work on oneself. I came in the sphere as we all need to heal. And obviously, like, I do some trauma healing as a coach. the way that I look at this journey now is one more of like self-evolution and growth. There are now individuals who come into my container who I don't think we ever really did necessarily any real big healing. I think we did some reframing and some like understanding their power and understanding where some belief systems came from. But I've also seen individuals like when you're coaches in the healing sphere, you always want to then your business depends on someone always needing to be healed. And that provides a really sticky situation as well, because then I see as coaches, I've seen clients come in and be like, I was told that this was needed to work on me. I was told that this was wrong with me. And I was like, you're fucking, you know what? You're good. You're okay. Like, obviously, or whatever, you're going through some stuff in your life. It's bringing up some things. I think you just need to move through a process. But the need to sometimes always say, to pathologize everything, or to say, to just like to pathologize sometimes the innate characteristics of the human experience. And this is what happens with the commercialization and commodification of healing too, right? We always want to make sure that there's something wrong with someone because our income depends on it, right?
Yeah, I think that can definitely be a sticky fly trap for sure. But I would even reframe it once more, being that if you get to the point where somebody is like, you're good. I tell my clients that once they get to the point, like, yeah, man, we don't need to focus on trauma all the time. Yeah. Like, you're doing well. Let's focus on how we can continue to explore, who you want to be and reframing your lives and your belief systems and just how we can create even more success. Right. Yeah. That's a huge chapter of the journey. But I think that's even a form of healing.
Yeah.
Even though it's not focused on the darkness, focusing on the light side is also very healing. So I think that's the whole spectrum of it as a reframe.
And I think we're just having a difference of opinion in terms of uses of terminology right now.
Sure. Language is clunky.
I think we're talking about the same underlying concept here. I just noticed that a lot of us who came from family environments that were heavily narcissistic, or where like us having to use perfection, like us having to be perfect was heavily encouraged. Like, perfectionism was heavily incentivized, right? So this whole notion of there's always something to heal can actually reactivate that old wound of I'm not good enough, and have a cycling, always trying to fix something. If I just healed enough this, if I just healed enough then they'll love me. And so I think it's very just important for us to draw that distinction and delineation, that like, no, you don't have to heal more to be this or something of that nature, because we can almost get people repeating this pattern of I'm not good enough and there's always something to improve, right? And that's where we can get in the cult of self-improvement, right? There's always somewhere to be better. And that's a very Western mindset, a very Western mentality that has its own shadows. Like, some of this is, what if you're already enough? Mm-hmm. And we just have to work through some of the faulty programming to get you back into that. Right.
Yeah, that's where I think it gets really complex and confusing for a lot of people, because even what you said, it's like, well, what if we're already good enough, but we need to work through faulty programming? It's like immediately, it just with our language, it's like, oh, well, if it's faulty, there's something wrong with it. Right. So it's like, that's where it can get a little confusing. And it's just about balance. That's the core of what we're saying. Because if you only believe, like, on either extreme, it's probably not helpful. Because if you only believe I'm perfectly good as I am, I don't need to change a thing, and you're like, your life is in shambles, your relationships are falling apart, and like your survival, your ability to survive in your life is crumbling, it's like, okay, well, we need to take action and do something. On the other side, if you're only looking for problems, what are you going to create more of? Right? So there's got to be something in between. I'm curious to you, how do you, whether you're working with clients or just in your own self, find that balance between the two? Because obviously both are important.
The balance in terms of
like working on healing trauma, or just like working on just like being okay and like being good enough.
I mean, they go hand in hand. Right. I will say, I just want to draw back a little bit in terms of, referencing my own experience. Like, I've been in a situation where I've invested tens of thousands of dollars to someone who, did provided healing, but also created a lot of harm. And I've also been in situations where I invested several $1,000s, and that person probably provided me like a decade's worth of healing and growth and evolution in the span of 3 months. So it's so interesting to see the flip side of this. And It's a lot of my work is showing people you were already enough, but where did you become disconnected from that truth? Right. And so then it's also about if you became very disconnected from that truth, if you have a lot of internalized shame, then we're looking at a lot of trauma healing. Because to me, trauma is this whole imprint of, I know it's an unprocessed experience we didn't allow through, but it's this whole imprint of somewhere along the way, we were given this implicit or explicit sign. I need to be more like, I'm not enough as is. Like there's something outside of me, or there's something inherently wrong with me. And so we have to find the unprocessed experiences of where that imprinting started occurring. And that's when we start looking more at trauma healing, at trauma, whatever, right? Now, when you have an individual come in, sometimes I have individuals come in and they're like, I'm happy with myself. I'm good enough. But man, I'm going through this reconstructing in my business, or I'm having doubts in my relationship, and da-da-da. And that's more of a like, okay, you're trying to tap into like maybe even like a higher truth that you necessarily hadn't access to yet. Like, then we might even use a little bit more metaphysical, esoteric concepts or whatever, right? We're not always going into like the 4-year-old you. Like sometimes we're like, hey, can you find that higher voice? Can you tap into that meditative space? So I think it's a little bit of a where the person is at, where they're coming from. There's a stark contrast for me in terms of clients who, not from a bad way, but are like very much like, I am inherently bad. Like everything is wrong with me. Right, that I'm going to employ a lot of different modalities and techniques versus someone who's like, hey, I have a loving family, I'm doing great, but I'm just not happy with my career, and there's some fear around transitioning to something more and for really fully embodying my truth. Like that's a little bit of a different. I'll be utilizing, I think, a little bit different type of I don't know what the word is, but just a little bit of a type of paradigm in terms of how I'm going to shift them versus the latter or former, right?
Gotcha. And, being the topic today is the cults of self-help.
Yeah.
How would you personally identify whether something is more cultish or is more pure in nature?
I think cultish is like they're trying to take your own internal power away from you and make it externalized to something outside of you. Right. You don't necessarily even need a leader for something to become a cult. Like, and it's also the ability to express your truth, the ability to logically reason through some certain things, the ability to speak out against certain things are so discouraged and disincentivized. Right. I put out a post over a year and a half ago where I said the new age spiritual sphere is a cult. And a lot of people were very offended by that. But I started noticing like a lot of superiority complexes taking place, right? A lot of over-identification with certain spiritual constructs. I also noticed like this whole, I need more. I'm not finding the appropriate words right now, but something that really takes your power away and encourages you to collectively come together to pedestalize something outside yourself as the answer and the savior. Right. And this whole feeling, this whole void that people feel within themselves right now, which I actually believe is largely due to characteristics inherent within modernized mainstream Western society. Right. This void that people feel. But if I'm just spiritual enough, if I'm just this enough, if I manifest enough, that void will go away. That can become very culty. Right. And so I think it's always allowing someone to be led back to themselves and to not shame or propagate fear because someone no longer wants to potentially participate in your services or whatever the fuck you're doing. Right. This whole notion I think you see in the self-help space of you want to leave this program because you don't want enough. That language becomes culty. Right? When we're shaming and propagating fear upon an individual that they need us or they need something outside themselves to be okay. And if they're not doing it, they're not a part of the group. Right? That's when we're looking at like some cult dynamics coming in. I think there's a lot of cult dynamics that exist within the self-help, self-improvement sphere. Would you agree?
Definitely, man. And I think because that was like, I guess you could say where I started was with the more cultish
Yeah,
programs and
me too.
people and businesses,
Me
that
too.
I feel unfortunately that it affected me, and I learned from those people, and I've had to really deprogram and eradicate those parts of where I've been doing it. And a lot of it's unconscious too, which is too bad. But yeah, like, to transition to, like, I'm even going through an interesting transition in my own business and what I'm going through. And I'll be honest, like, I'm afraid of what's to come. I don't know. The finances, I have no idea what's going to happen. Right. So
Yeah.
I'm in that space. Zach has been in that space many times. And he was telling me before the pod, well, dude, it always works out. Just, trust and spirit. But of course I'm in it. Right. But what I have been almost only offering for my services is high ticket stuff,
Yeah.
which is, thousands of dollars for a longer term container. Now, most Americans don't even have $500 in their account for an
Yeah.
emergency, right? There's some statistic like that.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. So immediately, if that's the only thing that I was offering, I'm cutting off a huge segment of the population, sometimes arguably segment who need it the most.
Yeah.
Because they're already so much struggling in these different areas of their life. But regardless, I am focusing away from that and onto something that's very, very affordable. Now, of course, my income is very low. It's lower than it's been for a long time, but I'm feeling guided towards it. It's, I've mentioned it before, the $7 group coaching thing that I'm offering, which just makes it available for everybody, because even somebody on unemployment could scrounge together $7 in a month in order to get healing and to learn and to grow within themselves. Right. So yeah, that's kind of a transition, because I was always taught, sell high ticket. You're going to make more money for less effort, and you won't have to deal with as many people.
Yeah.
And there's nothing inherently wrong with high ticket. It can be a great thing. It can be beautiful. Like Zach and I have both had high ticket things we've signed up for that have been incredibly helpful. And we're so glad we spent that money.
Yeah.
But there's also been things where it's been like, damn, I feel like I just got scammed. So I'm transitioning to something that kind of gives the power back to the people and is a lot more manageable, and just switching that mentality, instead of how can I get more giving less, but how can I give more while taking less? And it's kind of scary, but that's, I think that's, for me, is how I'm kind of switching away from any cultish tendency I might have had in my past self and trying to do something from a more giving place.
So, and I think it's important for us to even draw like awareness to like the differences in our background in terms of how we came into the sphere. Oliver came in utilizing like business and marketing coaches, and that's how a lot of people initially come into the sphere. I didn't even know what a fucking coach was when I initially came into this sphere. I was just doing mindfulness work because I just left law school and I just felt guided to, like, and so I have never wanted to utilize a business or marketing coach or whatever. And there's also, you can see some drawbacks from that in my business model now. Like, people laugh at like how disorganized I am. But like, I didn't even know about high ticket coaching. Like, I was just like, someone wants to see me for a session, great. And that's kind of how that model kind of came up, where I was just doing one-off sessions with individuals. Then I got flooded into the coaching industry when I just started posting information around mental health on social media. And I saw the high ticket and this and that and manifestation. And like, I was someone who had been completely separated from that part of the industry. While Oliver, you came into it right away. And I know for me, I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, this is like, I had my own spiritual awakening. I had my own like real big experience. I'm like, they're talking about this experience and it seems very different from what I went through. Like, and then it's all about making more money. And I was like, there's all this stuff that I came into, this awareness of like materialism, using spiritual techniques or spiritual practices purely for the outcome of materialism, is dark. Not that you're not allowed to have a lot or be very abundant, but if your pure intention is for materialism, it's dark. And that's all I saw in the coaching and self-help space. And I was like, fuck it, right? And I went after the sphere very hard for a year. And there didn't seem to be a lot of focus in that. Oliver, you're drawing awareness to this. Didn't seem to be a lot of focus. So I'm like, well, how do you serve people who can't afford it? Right? Who come from oppressive or marginalized backgrounds. right? And this is coming from someone who's been a high ticket coach as well too, even though I've always had pro bono and discount clients in at every cohort. But it definitely did seem like the focus in the sphere was in a direction that was, I'll be fully honest, is selfish and narcissistic.
Yeah. And how can I build my dream reality with the mansion and the yacht and all this shit? That's very much pushed. And it's very easy. I'll be honest, for me, it was very easy to fall into that mindset, onto that track, because I dropped out of college to work on myself because I was extremely suicidal and I hated myself. I was extremely anxious. I needed to do something about it. So there's a lot of financial trauma in my family. So I immediately got shamed really hard on both sides, trying to get me to go back to college and to, stop what I'm doing. And then eventually I discovered coaching through trying to fix myself. And I'm like, hey, think I'm good at this. I think I could make it into a career. And, because what was I doing? I was, working some minimum wage job. I wanted to do something. And so with all that shame and pressure, I had to make an income. And so all of my focus is how can I make this work? How can I make this work? And it was just, okay, I need to figure out the business and the marketing side. And so I went into that space and felt like I was programmed. But, growing up, I recently, just this past week, my parents told me, and I didn't know this before, we went without food.
Yeah.
They put water in the milk to make it last.
Yeah.
They starved so that me and my brother could eat.
Yeah.
Right. And we're eating beans and rice.
Yeah.
So I didn't even really know that, but that's part of where that intense survival pressure came from. And so that was translated into me trying to do whatever I could to make a profit so that I wouldn't be a failure in my parents' eyes, but also so I could survive too. And I can see how, especially earlier on, how I sacrificed maybe certain ethics, you could say, where I've been pushy, or I've turned people away, or I've burned bridges or whatever, because I was just trying to survive. Right. And I think there's a lot of that, and it's been tough. I'm grateful to still be even able to do this, but it's been hard to decode. And I feel like I've come a long way, but
and so that's why I think, and I think, you bring up your own background. These are great things for people to understand, right? Coming from, you don't fit into the systems. You don't necessarily fit into the college system, which most individuals don't. And that's not a bad thing at all. And then you come from backgrounds of poverty, and then you have this little coaching sphere, and they're you can be as rich and great as me if you just follow the steps. If you just follow the steps, right? And it can lead first of all, a lot of it's a lie. I got to be fully transparent with you. It's not that fucking easy. And even if you get there, a lot of times you're skipping steps to do so. What were you going to say?
Or you're going against your morality, and you're seeing people as numbers, and you're not giving a fuck if you're taking this person's last dollar and sending them into a world of debt, because you're so insanely you've convinced yourself that, it's going to be for their higher good. And then it's not. And then you're like, oh, whatever. I need to focus on helping other people making more money. And it's the people that get completely burned and hurt. It's
I'm biting my tongue hard right now because I keep
disassociate.
I keep because a part of me wants to lash out at big names in this fit, and I'm getting take the high road now, Zach, because I didn't used to.
It's most of them. It's most of them. It's not
most of them, but
most of the big names, I think. From what I've seen, I could be wrong, but I think most of the big, because obviously you can do it in an ethical way, but I think it's easier to get big.
Yeah.
And this is the case in all kinds of business, not just the coaching sphere, but if you're willing to put profits over relationships and you're able to manipulate people, it's going to help you grow and make more money. That's part of the problem with capitalism, but that's,
okay. And it's not even about capitalism per se. It's about capitalism coming into certain spheres, even more from a more pronounced level. And what I mean by that is it's one thing if you're trying to encourage someone to buy some fucking hardware equipment from Home Depot, right? And you're hey, what's happening is people coming into the healing sphere, or even the spiritual coaching and all of this stuff, right?
Yes.
They're very vulnerable. When I found my way, I was the most atheist person in the world. So when I'm going to a spiritual healer,
Me
what
too.
the fuck do you think was happening to me where I'm seeking out spirituality now? Right? Or having
Yeah.
like my brain is in mush. Like I'm in a very vulnerable place or whatever. If you told me to jump, I'm gonna fucking jump. Right. And so there seems to be this lack of awareness that like a lot of times when you're in the coaching sphere, you are having individuals come in who the mental health system did not work for them. Right. They're vulnerable. They might be going through awakenings. They might be going through their entire life collapsing. And then you're sitting there and you're saying, give up your life savings and I'll make you better. That's one of the most disempowering and disenfranchising things you can do to an individual. And even if it works, you're always operating at a deficit. Right. And this is the shit that makes me angry. I'm going to be fully transparent. It makes me piss the fuck off. Okay. I've never told a single individual to go into credit card debt to afford me.
It is because it is so promoted on these business coaching programs.
Yeah.
They all of the big ones, they're like, do it because it's for their higher good. And it's like, because even if they do get better results, it's like, well, they're still in debt. And so like while you've maybe fixed a problem in one area, you've created a new one. So I think that's what's
but like,
deficit.
You did like individuals like are going to have a hard time healing if they're in heavy survival mechanisms because they just invested every dollar. Like there are individuals that I just say like to probably be in the place that you need to be in, like things need to be a little bit more stabilized. And then there's some ones I'll go in pro bono and be like, hey, your life's collapsing. You need me to hold space. Fine. But this whole notion, like, that you should go into debt or like you should give every dollar you have. And if you don't want it enough. That shame-based tactics to get people. I'm trying to breathe through this, but to draw it back and to get there are techniques used in the coaching sphere, right, that are predatory. We've seen it, we've witnessed it. And at the same time, there's real medicine underneath all the shit because there are really good people here who really know what they're doing, right? Who are filling in for the holes and flaws that exist within our mental health system miraculously. And so I think, Oliver, to kind of even draw the conversation back to a more neutral point which I'm being very guided to right now, which is the fact that like, give me a second.
Well, yeah, take your time, man. This is deep stuff. This is powerful,
It's the fact of that we have a coaching sphere that gives us this carrot that like, oh, if you do this program, you'll be healed. All your symptoms will go away, which I do think it's more involved than just that or whatever, right? Even as we work on one symptom, right, we up level and more symptomology can come up. And then also like, if you just become a coach, all your financial troubles, all this stuff goes away. And we have to remember to become a doctor, you train 8 years. To become a lawyer, there's the undergraduate, right? There's a 3-year law program, okay? And even then, you're a junior associate for a long time, okay? Same thing with engineering, right? So these professions that are very important and integral and involve a lot of skill-based knowledge, there's a lot of years that you have to learn and you have to train to get there. And, and I understand why the mental health therapists, a lot of them hate the coaching industry. If I were them, I would too. Right. A lot of them, went through their educations. I don't think their educations are good enough. I got to be fully transparent, but they still put in the hours and the work. And a lot of them did works with clinics or serving under like, marginalized populations when they initially come out of school. And then you have this flashy influencer come out and just be like, hey, just think positive thoughts and all your problems go away. And they're like,
right. With the highly curated Instagram posts with the flashy wealth and the girls. And it's like that is a lot more alluring to our primal brain.
Yeah.
Than like just a therapist office and a brown couch, just on those primal levels.
Yeah. And so what's going on is I think this is why we need to have some reform within the coaching sphere. Like when I was a coach initially, I was in poverty level, even despite going to like a great law school or whatever. Like was not backed by family money or anything. Like I was broke as fuck for a year when I was building this thing, right? And then even after the year where I had a full-based practice, a lot of the money was still being invested in my own coaching and therapy because, God, I was holding space for so much trauma. I wanted to make sure my own shadows weren't coming out. It wasn't like I was out here just killing it. Like there was a real process that occurred for someone like me to get into a good place in the sphere. I spent a year, like multiple years, learning and reading everything. And then I was giving services for extremely cheap because, hell, I'm new to the sphere. I'm learning on the job in a lot of ways, right? And so who the fuck am I to charging like high rates of money right now for my services? Right. And to build and build and build, to learn and learn and learn, to get my feet underneath me, to get the experience. And then you're in a position to kind of, get on social media and to have some influence and to be able to speak from a place of real knowledge, insight, and wisdom, because you've put the years in. And I do think there needs to be some type of structure or framework to at least let people know is it's not this process of, hey, I just take this coaching course and then I'm a millionaire tomorrow, telling other people how to be coaches, right? Because first off, even if that is true, it's somewhere along the way, you're being out of alignment, right? This process takes experience. It takes a lot of studying, right? To actually be from a place of really serving others and be able to hold space for people who are in the most vulnerable parts of their healing journey, and to explore the unconscious self with someone, right? You better know what the fuck you're doing.
And definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause you can really hurt people. People can get really hurt.
Tremendously. Absolutely. And there's a lot of harm that goes on in these spheres because of that. Right.
And, this whole coaching profession, it's unregulated. There's no central degree you get like a traditional therapist or a doctor, lawyer, right? So there's issues in that. I personally went to a life coaching college. It was a year-long program. It was great. It was like, to me, I felt like I learned way more useful things in that time than I did in my experience in traditional college.
Yeah.
But again, it's like there are certifications out there that it's like 3 days on a weekend for, a few hours.
Yeah.
You get a certification. Look, I'm a certified coach. Look at me.
Well,
I'm my business up and running. Right.
It's really interesting because I even came into the sphere a little bit through the energy healing world, and don't get me started on how I got into that. But I wake up and suddenly I could feel and sense energy. But the model in that sphere is 2 weekends of workshops. I'm talking about Reiki, and you can practice on anyone, right? You charge whatever. And it's like 2 weekends. You want people to take energy healing seriously, which I actually think it is a beneficial modality when utilized appropriately. But you're constantly crying out that people don't take energy healing seriously, but then you're also saying anyone can energy heal on other individuals with 2 weekends of training. You're making a joke and caricature of itself right there. Right. And this is what we see, not all certifications are equal. I think it's amazing that you found a year-long life coaching institute that worked really well for you. And I've heard from many others that those exist and they've had great benefit, profound benefit. Right. But I know from the spiritual side, it's like there's this heavy commercial capitalist incentive to convince people or to delude people that they're all magical wizards after a weekend's worth of training, so you can take their money.
Yeah.
Right.
Definitely.
And so, obviously, I call myself a shamanic healer now. Right. And that's been a very difficult thing for me because I think the term shaman has become a caricature as well. Right. And what people don't understand is throughout human history, if someone was denoted as what you would call a village shaman, right, or a village healer, they trained for a long time. It was not an overnight process. There was eldership around, you really worked at it, right? And now it's become this joke of one LSD trip into Tulum, and you can call yourself that, right? And so it's really important to, that's what I'm saying is a lot of these terminologies and a lot of these modalities, they've become prostituted in a way, or at least the heavy caricatures of them. Whether you're a life coach or not, you're dealing with people's psyches, like you are, right? And my God, you better understand some things before you're going into someone's brain. You know what? You better have more than 2 weekends of energy healing training before you're going into someone's energy field. It's real. There's a lot of damage and harm that can be caused there. And I participated in it. I was right out the gate, and I didn't know what I was doing initially. I gotta be fully transparent. I would go to my mentor and be like, what is going on? And she was just like, just trust. And it's like, it's more than that. I need more training. This is ridiculous. Right.
Definitely. And I even dislike being called life coach anymore.
I hate that.
Number one, it's not, yeah. Number one, it's not accurate. It's a very vague term. And it's, like you said, it's been hoarded out, that industry. It's been hoarded out for cash. And it's just, it's a shame, man. It sucks. It's horrible. I don't even have many words for it. It's just, it not only does it lead to unqualified people harming those who are very vulnerable, like you're saying, but it also leads to people who are genuinely qualified being laughed at, being not taken seriously.
Yeah.
Right.
No, definitely.
There are some people, I share what I do for work, and they're like, they don't even think of it as a real thing.
I know.
You know, or they just completely don't understand it. And it's like, man, and then the people who actually go through with this work that you and I do, and they find that healing within themselves, oh my God, is it the most powerful thing? And so often, for me, it was the most important thing I could have done with my time.
Yeah.
Is work on myself.
Yeah.
It has tremendous benefits in all levels because you're the core of everything in your life. You are at the cause of everything. So if you work on yourself, everything around you is affected in a positive way. Maybe not initially, but overall, right? So
well, if you were, you're smart, you're intuitive, you actually ended up getting the right education to know how to properly work on yourself. There can actually be people who work on themselves in ways that actually create more harm. And
so there's a lot of delusion. There's a lot of self-delusion, a lot of like people who talk about like transforming your belief systems. Yeah. There's a lot of self and like lying to yourself that happens.
They're just disassociating, right? Because if you're not working at the level of the body, you're just doing mind tricks, and that could actually be fragmenting and fracturing off from real parts of yourself. Yes. Like this field is a fucking mess. Like, I mean, this is what we're talking about. And, you know, as someone who tried to leave multiple times and then would just get flung back here by the universe or whatever, it's because like I have utilized certain healers who were amazing at what they did. I mean, the effect it had on my life was profound. And so then it becomes like, how do we weed out the toxic aspects of this and really hone in on the medicine that's here? It's very clear. Society is not well. It's not. People are struggling on a mental health level to a degree and capacity we have not seen. So the return of the modern medicine man, women, right, medicine person is very important right now.
Yes.
But you might have to work through a lot of, you know, not all of them are like this, whatever. Like I have a buddy Vish who's in the manifestation space. He's amazing. But you're gonna have to probably walk through a shitload of like, you know, manifestation influencers to find the gold. And that's the problem right now. You know,
and I both had to do that as students ourselves. That's part of the journey, and that's just how it is right now.
I mean, for me, I want to speak personally. Like, I was never in the manifestation space. I was never in like the making money space or whatever. Right? I was so broke when I started out. But I was in like the diluted spiritual space, which like if you disassociate from your emotions, if you disassociate from your internalized experience, you're more enlightened.
You're not your thoughts.
Oh my God, yeah, and
you're just an energetic being. That's all. That's the real you.
You look, and a majority of these people, they're not home. Like there's like their eyes are very glassy, like
not grounded,
not grounded at all, and it's sad because people like I said, when people have awakenings, once again, they're in very vulnerable places. and they're being taken advantage of, and they're almost like entering into this new matrix, this spiritual weird matrix, if we're going to use that language, of like, you're a star seed. Not that there's not even utility to that term, but you're an eighth dimensional star seed, and they use it, and it's like, but what, like,
that's a good impression. They sound like that.
It's not. I'm not here to show those terms.
Namaste.
There's actual utility even in some of those terms and concepts. We just talked about Shannon Myers in our last episode. But if it's not grounded, if it's not integrated to where a person understands how it relates to their full sense of self, how it relates to what they went through in the past, right? Where their psyche is now, where their shadows are, where their blind spots are, you're just getting people to disassociate, and you're calling it spiritual enlightenment when really you guys are just being jackasses, or you're manipulating people to completely escape the shit that they actually have to work through to be a fully present, like, human being. Like, oh my God, some of the things that were being taught and encouraged in me when I first went to space, it drove me insane. I was in heavy spiritual psychosis for a year, and a lot of that I did not need to be in if the appropriate modalities and resources and space, and I got to be honest, like, somewhat abusive behavior was not going on towards me. And so
I could probably say the exact same for myself as well.
So we're great examples of people who've experienced the shadows of these industries. We've come at it from different angles, but there's real harm being done, right? And so as healers, we can't, I've tried to just run away from the sphere. We can't do that, but we do have to have these uncomfortable conversations that, oh my God, we definitely do need some more reform, or at least better educational tools and trainings here.
And honestly, going back to the primitive model of, like, traditional shamans, it's an apprenticeship and a mentorship over a long period of time. That, I think, is the best way to do that. And, and guess what? When you are an apprentice to be a shaman, you're doing the ceremonies, you're doing your healing, right? Yeah. Because I really believe that in order to hold space for people's darkest stuff, because it gets dark, people, you better believe it, right? That you need to have been through your darkest stuff to truly hold space, hold a non-judgmental space, and truly understand. Because even if you're holding space, if you don't really understand, you probably can't help the person as much if you haven't been through it.
100%. And like, when I was going through my process for the last, this has been, my whole life has been this path. Honestly, when I look back on it, like, everything's been fucked. But whether it was through my 4-year bedridden illness in my early 20s, right, through like losing my mind in my late 20s with the awakening, and like I would scream at the sky, like, what are you doing to me, man? Like, what the fuck? And it was like, hey, you better explore these places within yourself if you're going to hold space for others. Right. And so this whole model that right now exists in the mainstream mental health sphere, which, by the way, I want to preface this by saying there's a lot of wisdom and a lot of great things that are taught still within the mental health community. Like, they still actually do have a lot of things right. Okay.
Right. But even to add more context, even those people who might be the ones manipulating this field for their own personal gain and financial, they probably still have some things shared that are very good and that are very, like, based in truth and in love. So it's
not always love, but
well, sometimes, because I think in terms of service to self, service to others, it's a spectrum, right? Nobody's 100% either way. So that's what I'm saying, is like to ultimately take it all with a grain of salt and to trust yourself first. That's got to be the core of it. Yeah. To trust your own inner guidance first before what Zach or I are saying, or anybody on social media, or your dog or your mom, right? Trust yourself, because at the end of the day, you may not always be right. Yeah. But that's how you begin to build your own inner compass of deciphering what is true and what is not for you. And sometimes that can change over time, but that's when you have that internal focus, that's groundedness, because your focus isn't scattered all over the place over here, what this person's saying and this spiritual realm. Yeah. But no, you're here, and this is where you start. It's not that you can't be in those places, but your roots, like a tree, must start within. Yeah. So Zach's on mute, so I'm just gonna keep rambling and keep the airtime low.
Pun
Anyways,
intended.
yeah.
Pun intended, yeah. No, but no, keep going.
No, I mean that was the point, man. That was what I had to say.
Okay. Well, no, and I still want you to keep going because my partner was out and I didn't hear everything.
Yeah, you're good, man. Yeah, man. So it's like I think that trusting the core of what I'm saying is that the individuals on this path need to trust themselves first before anybody, which can be especially hard for certain people who have grown up to be gaslit.
Yeah.
That will make it very hard for you to trust yourself, let alone anybody else.
Well, yeah, and that's
so
why,
go ahead.
That's why, yeah, no, I think the first rule like that we need in this industry or field is like you have to listen to the person. The person says, I can't afford it, right? Like you can explore that, but don't say you're wrong. Right? Like when someone is saying this, I don't feel comfortable with this, listen. It's all about guiding the person back into their own internal awareness, their own internal answers. Like I'd have clients say, I don't like this, and I don't like this that you're doing. And it's never my place to push back on that. It's like valid. It's a collaborative thing. This is you correcting your childhood trauma of like mom and dad or whoever silenced you and didn't listen to you, or your needs or your voice didn't matter. Your truth matters here. In fact, it's the most important thing that I need to respect, right? This is where we start to get, where do abusive and culty dynamics occur? It's when you start telling the individual, your truth and your voice, it's wrong. My truth matters more than you, and you need to get to my truth. That's where the harm can occur, right? Getting people back to center, guiding someone back to their center so they know what they need in the moment, right? That's the corrective experiences we're trying to create in this field appropriately. Right.
Even as you're saying that, I'm like self-reflecting. I'm like, well, okay, where am I doing that? Like, where am I like holding? Oh, it's you need to get to my truth. And where am I doing that with my clients, or where have I done that in the past? And kind of like, oh shit, like, no, fuck, I need to like not do any of that. Like, that's not, it can be so tricky, especially when something has been taught to you.
And at the same time, I also think, well, if we're going to draw a distinction to where do unhealthy aspects come in this, whatever, I am not a proponent of the guru paradigm, right? I think it worked in terms of certain spiritual traditions and certain type of like environmental settings, or whatever. But oh my God, it does not work in a westernized capitalist mentality with social media influencers. This whole notion that this person has all the answers, this person is the oracle, and if I can just be like them, then I'm okay. That leads to huge potentials of abuse, which is why I always go on social media. I'm like, if you want to be like me, God help you. Your life is going to be fucking messy, right? Because it'd be very easy for me to paint a false projection of my life. And I did this like a couple of years ago. I made a joke. I'm like, this week I'm going to be a manifestation coach, and I'm going to manipulate you by only showing the best of my vacations and create a representation that this is my actual everyday reality when it's not, right? And so we can really mislead people by like pedestalizing an individual with a large influence. Most of the healers in this space, the really great ones, they still do not have it all together. They still do not have all the answers. Oliver and I were on this call beforehand, and he was asking me how I was doing. I saw a huge growth in my social media platforms this past week. And my initial reaction to it was like, fuck.
Like, yeah, you've almost like tripled your social media following in just
almost
few weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just, and even me, right, in this space, I'm like, the imposter syndrome starts kicking in, especially with my history of childhood trauma and things, right? And I want people to understand, like, I have this deep fear of like, I don't want to misuse an influence, and I don't want to become the very things that we're pointing distinctions to, right? Like it becomes very easy to misuse this power and influence, especially when you're coming at a place from I have a connection to spirit. That leads a lot of potentials to really abuse and manipulate people. How many Netflix cult documentaries have we watched that it all started Jason from Ohio can talk to God.
Yeah.
Of course my wife can sleep with him, right? So it's
Why does he got to be from Ohio, man? Come on.
I'm sorry, bro. Everything sucks. Season's happening in Ohio lately. But Ohio took over from Florida. My bad. But no, I mean it's serious. Like I've had moments like this past week where it's just like, oh no, like it's here. I don't want this. I want to go away. And it's been something I've struggled with and battled with as well too, because there's a lot of responsibility that comes with being open. Like, hey, you know what? Like part of the work I do is connecting in from a spiritual place, and to not misuse that, especially as platforms grow and grow and grow. The intersection of social media and social media influencers, and then spiritual like paradigms and spiritual belief systems, that intersection, we haven't seen that before throughout human history, right? So this is different. I mean, even Jesus, is like, the one we all look up to, if regardless of your religious tradition or whatever. We're just going to use this antidote, right? This hypothesis that, Jesus was a real figure who at the very least was doing spiritual teachings, right? He went into local communities and he spoke to them. Okay. This whole thing that everyone now has access to, like people with millions upon millions of followers on your phone, and they're speaking from a spiritual place. And some of those individuals, I guarantee you, are in very much alignment and are doing amazing things, but there's just a lot of area where that can go wrong.
And is going wrong.
It is going wrong. Right. Don't get me started on the QAnon movement. I don't know how that became a quasi-spiritual thing, right? But it's like it's people can be misled because people want to be a part of something, right? So it's tough.
Definitely. Yeah, man. And it's not clear necessarily the best path forward either. I think we're all just trying to do the best that we can do on all sides. And man, I've had to surrender so many times and give up things that I've been so attached to on my path in order to not fall into that trap. Because I've been in that kind of way before, as I've mentioned. And I don't feel guilty about it now because I've done releases around this and I've found forgiveness for myself, but it's still like, it's so deeply ingrained that I just want to fucking eradicate all of that and be able to just serve without all this extra baggage and extra hurt. There's enough pain in the world. We don't need to cause more.
Well, and here's the thing too, unfortunately right now, especially if an individual is listening to this, and wants to be in this space or wants to grow their influence in the space, you are going to make mistakes. In fact, it's imperative you make mistakes. You have to just learn from the mistakes, right? You have to be willing to have the self-awareness and to be able to look at this, whatever, because unfortunately right now, there is no big group of elders leading you through this path. It's messy. And so, a lot of your training and teaching is going to be from working with people or from life itself, right? Or from engaging with people in social media comments. I know this is the 21st century paradigm of this experience. It's fucking weird, right? And you're going to make mistakes. The amount of times I try to trash talk other spiritual healers or like get in beefs with other spiritual influencers, and I get the stuff like, you are out of integrity. I'm like, all right. So you're definitely going to make mistakes.
Yeah, definitely, man. I can relate to that pretty heavily. Yeah, man. And I want to parrot a point you made a second ago, because I think it's just so important, is like, none of the people you see have it all together. Zach and I don't have it all together. We still have shit we're working through. We still have places where we have insecurity. We have self-doubt. We have fear. We have anger issues. We have shame, right? Yeah. It's just that we have climbed out of a significant portion of it from our past, and we're doing better, Yeah. And so that's kind of, and I always try to tell my clients that frequently. It's like, guys, I'm not, there's no such thing as fully healed. At least I don't know what that is, because I'm not that, right? As far as I've come, like, I still, I still get beef with people too, and as loving and accepting as I can be when I'm just around people through all their flaws. Sometimes, like, recently I was at the airport and, a little underslept from traveling all over. And I'm just like, I'll just see somebody next to me and they're just talking and I'm like, I fucking hate that person. Fuck them. Like there's that, you know what I mean? It's like, that's not very loving and accepting.
Yeah, but that's called being fucking human, right? And
right, yeah.
And we have a lot of, you know, big names in the sphere who like, hold on real quickly. Oliver, can you hear what's going on in the background or are you good?
No.
Okay, cool. All right. So I just want to make sure you couldn't hear my partner doing dishes. All right. So, guys, it's not like we have like, you know, grade A studio.
This is really, guys, I don't know if you know this, but this is really high level Hollywood production value that you're getting right now. Yeah. So really be grateful for this opportunity to listen to our podcast.
Yeah, man. We filmed our first episode.
I'm on my iPhone right now, man. My Wi-Fi is so fucked up. I got to record this on my iPhone. We
filmed our first episode. Andrew Murnane and Ray, like Andrew Murnane has like more than 1 million followers, and like, and I was in the basement of my partner's home. I'm doing well in my group, but like, you know, I don't want to paint this picture that we're like some Hollywood production over here. You know, my partner's like, you know, doing dishes right now. I just want to make sure it didn't come in too clearly. But yeah, but here's a great example of just like two dudes
bridging the gap, baby.
we don't have it all together. And like sometimes with social media, there's this need to project an image. And so much of the imposter syndrome that I even have coming up right now is like, I'm still messy. I still have a lot of negative thoughts. Who the fuck am I to now have 60,000 followers on Instagram, right? But at the same time, like, you know, I've had to talk to friends and loved ones like over the last couple of weeks of like my fear, and they're like, Zach, this is why people vibe with you, because you're not painting a false projection, right? You're owning your shit. And I think we have to kind of de-pedestalize the spiritual healer or the spiritual influencer, right? Because like I said, a lot of us are coming in the sphere looking for a savior. Like when we're in a very vulnerable place, we're looking for someone to save us. And so for us, it's very important to normalize and humanize the actual people who have like large followings or who have, you know, the ability to influence certain things. And I'm fucking human. Right? People piss me the fuck off. There's no amount of mindfulness and meditation work that I can do where I just don't want to club someone sometimes. I've done enough not to act on it, but you better be, I'm observing it now. Right? I'm being the observer behind the experience, right? I want to smack someone upside the head because they just cut me off. But like, you know, this notion that like, if you're just this enlightened, you'll escape the human experience, whatever. Even Jesus walked in and was flipping over tables in the fucking in the temple, right? Like we have to normalize, like we're all here to be human. This whole teaching is around how to just embody the core central parts of who you are as a person and not to get spun in too far into negativity, you know? But like, even the biggest influencers, even the biggest names in the space, we all shit, we all eat, you know.
Everybody poops.
Right. Exactly. It's not
just like that classic book, man. Everybody poops.
Everybody poops, right?
Yeah.
So
even that beautiful Instagram model, they poop too.
They do. They might have Crohn's disease. They might poop even more than you, right? Sorry.
It might come out sloppy too, you know?
Okay, stop. I was getting back. So no,
hey, you started it, bro.
Stop. So what we're trying to say is that like, even me, someone still like, I still have the programming of, oh, white spiritual influencer looks like this. I don't look like that. I can't do this, right? It's like a fucking program, and we have to deprogram that. Okay, like you got, obviously as a healer, you got to be doing your work. You can't be having mental breakdowns every fucking day if you're going to hold space or have a position of influence. But at the same time, you gotta normalize the human aspects of you. No one escapes this shit. There's no amount of work that you can do where you're still not going to have some anxiety here or there. You're still not going to have fear. You're still not going to experience shame to some degrees. It's just about getting into in a healthy amount, and you can regulate through that appropriately without just taking the wheel of yourself. Okay. But to think that like we're all trying to reach enlightenment in this life, a lot of people just want to be able to feel okay in their fucking body. You know, a lot of people been through a lot of trauma. They go into the spiritual spaces because the mental health system has left them behind. And then they got their influencers trying to teach them how to manifest a BMW, how to become enlightened, how to never have a negative thought. And oh my God, all Jerry wanted was a girlfriend. Like what the fuck? What happened?
Yeah, man.
Right? Oh my God, you know, and now he's, okay, I'm gonna say it, but like,
or the other route is going the dating route with all the pickup artist stuff.
Oh my God.
I know that very well. That's the way I went.
That would probably be a great topic for us to talk about on another podcast, because I know my introduction to self-help was 17, 18-year-old me watching like reading like Neil Strauss's pickup book, being like, I'm a skinny guy. I want girls too. Right. And it's like, and it's all manipulation tactics. It's all
dude, I have so many stories
manipulating
to tell.
women. Right.
Talk about a topic. I will have a lot to share. And that's where I might have to drop some names on that one. We'll see.
But this is why this whole sphere is a fucking mess. And we could explore this in so many dimensions and stuff, whatever. Right. A lot of men just don't want to feel bad anymore. They just don't want to feel depressed. And then they all think they need a Lamborghini, or they need,
and women too, man.
Yeah.
This ain't even so much a gender thing. And that's why I started off the podcast the way I did.
Yeah.
Focusing on like what we really need is healing.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's at the end of the day, it's like, that's where it starts. Like that needs to be the focus. Again, not on, okay, I need to like grind to get 6 figures, 6-pack, 6 cars.
Yeah.
Like we need to heal. Because at the end of the day, most of the, because this is self-help as a whole, right? Because when you talk about the self-help, there is a huge portion, especially for men, in the self-help where they're following the Andrew Tates and the people like that who are very much just promoting material gain and a lot of the things I just mentioned. When at the end of the day, it's like, why do you want those things? Probably because you just want a girlfriend, or you just want to have loving relationships that like you feel accepted by. At the core of it, I really believe that's what it's about, because that's talk about humanizing. That's what all humans want, and that's what all humans need, right? Yeah. And that's like one of our biggest goals in life. And without it, our mental health really suffers. So I don't believe that the wealth is the best way to get there. I don't believe so.
Well, I mean, and it's okay to want to work through poverty consciousness. It's okay to want things, right? But at the same time, when that is the carrot that's being held, when most people just want to be able to inhabit their bodies and minds, right, without spinning in these thoughts patterns that like just like decapitate you from a certain level, you know?
Yes.
I mean, this is the core central thing that people are asking for, but they're being manipulated by this big commodification of the self-help sector that is now just wants you to buy, right?
Yeah, man. It's like that carrot. The carrot, they're like, this is the carrot to get out of the matrix.
Yeah.
But really, it's leading you back in.
It's like leading you back in or whatever, right? It's we're using these language and this red pill. Like, I mean, it's gone so there. I see a lot of people just entering the sphere looking for a little help, right? And before you know it, like they are so far down some rabbit hole, regardless if the conspiracy is true or not, it completely disembodies them and they forget the original intent and purpose around why they even came in here. There's so much reform. There's so much like more just education that needs to be done around, right? I got to be honest. It doesn't matter if 9/11 was an inside job or not. If you're not even fucking present in your body and can't even show up for your family anymore, right? What does that do for you, right? Mm-hmm. Like people are getting lost in the wrong spheres. People are being led down the wrong spheres, you know? And so whether it's manifestation, whether it's the conspiracy communities, I mean, it's you're seeing people being dragged down a road that they didn't necessarily sign up for initially.
Yeah, man. And that's why I have such a push, especially now more than ever, for just talking about and sharing about trauma release. Because for me, that was the one thing that really started making a difference, you know? And man, like if people would just like, first of all, be aware of that that's even a thing. But number 2, find a way to start like working on it with themselves. Like, man, so I really believe so many of our problems are going to start to get in the path of being fixed in our world. I think that's the core of so much of the fucked up nature of everything. And like this whole space is a mess, you know. Going back to anyways, I don't want to loop on it.
No, but
But
it's true. Well, I mean, it's just, look, we all need to be paid for our services, right? Like I'm sorry, like the guy that really helped me during my process, like I think he should be making over $1 million a year, and he's not a big name influencer or healer, right? So there is this battle of people needing to be compensated appropriately for their work, but at the same time making it accessible to everyone and not making that the carrot or the goal that everyone needs to attain, right?
And I heard, funny from a quote from Grant Cardone, right?
Mhm.
I won't speak anything on him, but what I will say is his quote was that who's going to win in business? And he's like, the one who's going to win is not the best. It's going to be the best known that wins.
But here's the thing, and this is why we're talking about healing and therapy as a business now, right? And that's a difficult thing. Medicine people throughout human history, it wasn't necessarily a business. Like they served their communities or whatever, right? The community took care of them. That was the difference. Like it wasn't like they were doing everything for free. The community itself actively took care of them. Now, how that translate into a 21st century westernized mentality, I don't know, right? Like this is difficult because I don't think it's in my gut saying it's not a conversation for now, but like I said, the intersection of like these old ancient teachings around healing, around releasing, around connecting mind, body, and soul, and now a capitalist consumerist society, it's just very messy. Leaves a lot more room for shadows to kind of come up.
Yeah. And I think you and I, in our own ways, are doing our absolute best to try to bridge that gap between either extreme and to find the middle ground that's actually going to be useful and helpful. There's almost a pioneering that has to happen because shamanism is not new. Healing's not new. Social media is, and those together is definitely new.
And it's new to Western society, right? Unfortunately, in the Crusades, we murdered all the shamans, and now we need them back. So
yeah, that was
oh God. And now Brad, right, figured out that he can sleep with a bunch of girls in Tulum if he just calls himself one, and there's no certification process. So it's messy. It's very messy. But we clearly need the modern day healer to return, or the healer to return. But it's like, how do we get them to that point? And how do we get the collective to understand how to engage with these healing modalities in a way that's useful and beneficial, and not just from a purely extracting or a prostitutional basis?
Right. And that's honestly, that exact question is why I put together my group, $7 group coaching. Is I wanted to make this information as available as possible. While I think when it's completely free, psychologically people don't value it as much. But when it's so cheap,
I tried to do that. It didn't work.
Less, at this point, it's less than the cost of a $5 footlong because of inflation, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, so that's my personal approach of how I'm trying to take action on it. And, I'm feeling good about it. It's a new thing. We're actually having our second ever call this Saturday, just a couple of days. And so I'm looking forward to doing my part of it, man. And I very much know you are doing your part as well. I think you should quickly share the story. You just told me before the pod that you went to a Teal Swan event and were brought up on stage to talk about these similar kinds of topics. And I'd love for you to share about that, man. I think that was really interesting.
So yeah, I recently went to a Teal Swan event. For those, when I initially had my spiritual awakening, Teal Swan was actually very important for me. Just because a lot of the spiritual teachers were talking on this level of manifestation and getting stuff and astral projecting. And it's like, oh my God, I just have a shitload of trauma coming up. I feel like I'm losing my mind. I'm encountering all my shadows. And she seemed to be one of the only main people that was speaking on that. Now, unfortunately, she had a documentary come out, which showed a not great side of her, and TLS recently come out and said, it was edited very poorly. But so I initially was very hesitant to go to her public seminar when someone had asked me to come, and eventually I had this intuitive hit, just go. So we went there. It's a big theater, still I think at least more than several hundred people were there. I had this intuitive hit to yeah, I'll be honest. Like my higher self was like, Zach, we're getting you on stage. I was like, no, you ain't. Right. And so eventually I rose my hand. I was in the very last row and she called me up. She was like, you with the beard, come on up here. And so for 20 minutes, I talked, I said, hey, like I'm in the sphere. I have imposter syndrome. I have fear around gaining influence. And this is before I exploded on social media recently to give context and to provide nuance. And we had a great conversation. She didn't show up trying to heal me. She talked to me about the difficulties she encountered over, her time in the sphere, and even wanting to have quit after the documentary came out and staying with it. I don't agree with all Teal's methods, but I also do think there's a hell of a lot of utility to a lot of the stuff she does, teaches, and applies, right? Like, but as I said, it's messy in the sphere. No one's perfect. But this has been a central theme for me of I'm a flawed, messy person. And just because I gain influence or something, whatever, that doesn't take that away. I never want to paint a false projection as if I'm a guy who has an answers because I just went through a shamanic healing path. That just means I explored a lot of dimensions of the human experience, right? A lot of shadows, a lot of shit. That doesn't mean that I have the answer for what you need to fucking do. And you know what? Even if I did, I do a huge disservice by taking your power away and not allowing you to get there yourself. And this is the paradigm that I think we need to switch through things. Stop pedestalizing people because they have a lot of followers on Instagram. I've said this before. The ability for me to get there was because I was very good at making infographics on Canva and making cute, short, little Instagram reels. My initial growth on Instagram was not because I was an amazing healer in the sphere. It was because I was good on Canva. Right.
That's the difference.
That's the metric. That's the metric. Whether someone is in a huge space or not, whether they're pretty. I'm sorry, I got to be honest. If I look like Quasimodo, I might not have the same social media following. Me being a tall, white, attractive dude, at least I like to think I'm attractive. Honestly, allows me to grow to a certain level, or whatever. But that doesn't mean that those characteristics in of themselves does not mean that I know what the fuck I'm talking about.
Yeah, you just happen to, right? Which is great. Which is why I'm glad you've been getting the more and more followers and more success, because dude, like you're legit. You're very fucking legit. And I've seen a lot of people and I've combed through a lot of people and you're fucking legit, man. You're as legit as they come. And yeah, man, that's part of what I've said before. And it's huge. It's like the person with the bigger number is the person that everybody thinks is the best at it. Because they have the bigger number, they must be better. No. If that means they're the better content creator is what that means, right? They're the better marketer. So it's like that's part of the mess and the confusion.
I've worked with someone who has a huge social media following, and in full transparency, still good. It was still great, but I will say that like the other person I've worked with two others who have much less social media followings, just for what I needed at the time. I just had a more profound beneficial experience with the two individuals that did not have huge social media followings. Right. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah.
And it doesn't mean you can't have a following and still be good. Right. Of course.
I hope so, because it's happened to me now. I hope I don't get shitty at my job all of a sudden.
I'll keep you honest, man. I got you.
Yeah.
But like I've heard a quote said before, is like some of the greatest at what they do, you'll never know about. You'll never know, because they're focusing their time on being great at the craft, not at being a great influencer. Well, those are two different skills. And now we have both had to learn the influencer side, which for me has been very uncomfortable and not natural.
Yeah.
Right. When I'm just talking to a camera, trying to make a video, trying to like teach something, I feel weird. Yeah. It's really awkward. I don't know how to come across. But when I'm actually engaging with another human being and able to help them specifically, it's very natural, right?
Well, that's also shit, because you're great on camera. But at the same time, you can feel awkward and nervous, but you're doing a great job. But I get the point you're trying to make, because I've been there as well too. Of like, my first video I ever did for social media, I was in the fucking fetal position the night before, be like, I'm going to talk about awakening. just left law school. I'm so weird. Everyone's gonna think I'm the weirdest dude ever, right? And like to pretend like we don't have those fears, right? That I want to like throw up every time I get on camera and like put something like really like personal and vulnerable out there, because I actually do feel called to normalize certain things. Like, oh my God, we're human. And same thing here. Like, it's like the biggest spirit, the ones with the biggest spiritual followings, a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them were just very good at knowing how to make glitzy content. It just doesn't necessarily mean they're great at their job. They can still be both, right? For me, when I was sick for 4 years, I just got good at graphic design because I was fucking bored, right? So then when I went, I'm like, I can make pretty infographics, right? And it's what initially like pumped my content and material out there on Instagram. Doesn't mean that I was good at my job. I just happened to be. I've never used a business or marketing coach because spiritually, I was always guided to master my craft. Now, hopefully through this paradigm shift, like something in the universe always was like working with me. It's like, you're going to get up to where you need to be no matter what. Just step back and get good at your craft. It'll find its way to you at the right times. But I think that's the difficulty in some of these other structures and some of these other systems. Not that they're perfect, but the head of a hospital, there's a reason they're head of a hospital. The head of the law firm, the senior partner, oftentimes there is nepotism. There's a reason they're senior partner, right? But we don't have that built-in system yet that exists within the spiritual coaching, mental health field right now, right? And so
it's just so new.
Yeah. The loudest voices, the ones with the most prominent, influential voices, may or may not be the ones who should be speaking, and that's tough. I am very grateful for the holistic psychologist, Dr. Nicole LePera. I think she deserves to have 6 million followers, right? Everyone may not agree with me, but like, some of the real ones are finding their way, and so hopefully that continues. But oh my God, like, yeah, I'm still terrified to have influence and respond and to do this. And that's part of it, right?
Yeah, man. Well, I think you're doing a good job, and I think everybody who's listening would definitely be on the same page. And yeah, man, it's like I just think I would love for the universe to just keep funneling you followers, because people need to hear what you're saying.
Yeah, and so it's like, also for me right now, I got to be honest, is there's like a little bit of a shift or a transition in me understanding, am I supposed to show up differently on social media? And I got to be honest, the answer intuitively was yes, right? Like there has to be a shift. Like I used to get on social media and just rip and just be like, fuck this, here's codependency, but here's how codependency impacts my life, and right? And now with the following, I feel this internal calling of like, a lot of this stuff I'm sharing is like, it's still through the prism of my own human experience, my own biases, my own personality or whatever. But like, I got to pull back a little bit. Like the things I'm teaching are beyond me. So in terms of injecting my own, lived experience, and like I am getting this intuitive hit, not to stop, but to pull back this information, this wisdom, it's beyond you, right? Let the wisdom do the talking, right? And so, it's interesting for me as I go through this path, like checking in with myself, what feels pertinent to how I show up on here, right? Like when I had a little bit less of a following, I felt guided that I could just let the pit bull in me out and rip the new age sphere apart. And I misfired a lot. It's people who follow me know that. But now with more responsibility, like I have to tighten the reins, so to speak, on certain parts of me. And that comes with its own grief process and period too. But like I said, this integration of spiritual teachings and social media, like this is beyond what I've seen we've experienced within the human experience. There's a level of responsibility and care that I'm learning. And I think, Oliver, you have a large following on TikTok that you're learning as well. And so it's really important to step back and be like, this is fucking bigger than me. Seriously, it is. And to be fully like, okay, like I don't want to misuse of wisdom potentially from a higher power coming through to me. There's real fear there. And if there's not, I think something went astray,
Definitely, man. There is something sacred to it, and
Yeah.
it's a high honor and a big responsibility, um, you know, to not misuse it. And I feel called that same way. I've had gut wrenching trauma releases around this very topic many times.
Yeah.
And it's always, there's just this part of me that cries so strongly of just like, please help me be like, purify myself to really just help and not let my ego get in the way, you know.
Well,
and it's so tricky.
And it's this awareness that the ego is probably going to get in the way, and that's just part of the human experience.
And does, yeah.
It's part of the human. It's part of the human experience. But just
and that's okay.
Our shadows and our blind spots. But like, you know, I felt like the universe put me in a little container for a little while where I was speaking out against, you know, I shifted from giving spiritual teachings as much to like just honing in on things that I saw in the wellness spiritual space that I did not like. And I got to see that, like, oh my God, I misfired a lot. Like I was projecting my own lived pain on my experience in the sphere onto sometimes people that didn't necessarily deserve it. Right. Like I said, like, and this is what I see. I see a lot of big time influencers too, just being like, this is what a narcissist is. And it's like, there does need to be greater awareness around narcissism. But I also do see that a lot of us are really projecting our own lived experience around these constructs and concepts out there. And it's like information overload. Right. It really is. And people are getting very contradicting, conflicting information because we're all coming from our own paradigm of experience, which isn't necessarily wrong, but it dilutes and distorts and it's all crazy. Right.
Right. Exactly.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So kind of like simplifying and getting closer to the truth and sharing that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, me personally, like I've read beyond like 150 books that have to deal with trauma healing and even the nature of the energetic body and some old spiritual, ancient, esoteric teachings or whatever, right? And I just read like the leading experts in each field and kind of fused it together. That awareness and knowledge is beyond me. It's beyond who Zach is as a person, right? And then it's influenced by also just kind of what comes through to me too, right? And so it's really important to like give those individuals credit or credence. In the Healers program, I have a whole reference and source list, but to also understand, like, you know, when you get to a certain level of a platform, it's not about you anymore, right? And I think, you know, for the last few weeks, I've had to like kind of hone in and understand that, and you know, learn to show up differently. And we're going a little bit of a side step, but it feels right. It just you know, this is stuff that even us in the sphere battle with and are trying to understand because it's a new paradigm of experience, right? I'm sure in ancient Greece, you just went to the public square and shouted, "Here's the teachings," right? But that's not what we're now it's on a telephone that gives you dopamine hits while scrolling, and 7 billion people can access you and your own energy field. I got to be honest, through your post at any time. This is complicated and confusing.
Yeah, man. And I think there's a lot to be seen as well. Like there's so much more to come and a lot of transformations that I think nobody can truly anticipate.
Yeah.
You know, and like similar, like our episode with Rocky around the metaverse and VR and all that. It's like, and then AI, the booming of that. It's like how that's going to then be a part of this sphere as well. It's like, who knows what's to come?
Yeah. No, we don't. There's so many new things that we are exploring collectively at this point in time and space, I believe. Right. And, you know, I mean, for God knows, for like several thousand years, people were in such heavy survival mechanisms. The concept of self-actualization or whatever wasn't even a thing that they came across them. Right.
Yeah.
And now with a lot of, not everyone, but with people's basic needs being taken care of, but then funneled into like, you know, these oftentimes careers that are very like workplace environments that are very toxic and disturbing, that aren't good for the human spirit. We're having a collective mental health crisis that we've never necessarily encountered. And this is all new, right?
Yeah.
Even the study of psychology itself. I mean, God, this is a new science. Not even really a science. If you want to,
it's not. Yeah.
Transparent, right? This is all uncharted territory. And it's why we're all exploring it together. And there's a lot of room for mess and mistakes. And we have to be honest about that.
Yeah. And there's also got to be a lot of room for new ways of doing it, new ways of helping people with their mental health and not being so attached to the old way.
Well,
know?
it's even me. I gotta just jump in. Like my whole big thing was like I was trained in a lot of spiritual and energetic healing modalities, and I saw firsthand taking from these tribal indigenous cultures for like to the T and just plugging into Western society. It doesn't work, right? Like I mean, even on that level, there needs to be integration while still paying respect to the actual culture and tradition, not just misappropriating it. But oh my God, like there are so many factors, so many variables going on right now, mixing and mingling. And this is why things right now in the coaching and self-help industry are fucking wild, right?
Yeah. It's like, how many times do we got to say it, right? It's very true. You know, it's a little messy. It's a little messy out here.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, man, is there anything else you wanted to speak on that?
No, I think we covered it all, right?
Okay. I want to quickly plug before you tune out, people. If you're still listening and there's anything that you want us to cover, any topics or anything, any suggestions of the sorts, or even guests, please DM me on Instagram.
Yeah.
Or Zach, if he's cool with that. But my DMs are open. You know, I don't have as many followers as Zach, so it's a little easier for me. Yeah. So we want this to be something that we're building together. It's not just me and Zach, the gurus speaking the wisdom. Like I want this to be something that with you, the viewer, all of you, we can build together as community, as equals, all as, together. In unity, you could say. So if there's any feedback or anything like that, please DM me on Instagram. I would love to hear it. And and we'll mention it on our next episode.